Russ went to Vegas. So I got Ron Gula to fill in. And Ron's kind of like if Steve Jobs and Paul Asadorian had a baby while the Winklevoss twins watched kind of guy. So stay tuned and check it out. SDL.
This is a Security Weekly production.
Welcome to Secure Digital Life. If your users are going to keep putting risky stuff on your machine, you're screwed. So, Top can help us understand the complexity of blockchain.
I was reading through the show notes, man.
Oof. In binary, it would be 001. Who cares? But it's probably not significant anyway. Be like you're looking out through the HAL dot, like,
oh,
hey, Dave.
It's like Sims, but with,
It would be like Sims.
Instead of AI, it's only.
Accredited by Microsoft, Cisco, NetApp, IDLE, Oracle, and EC Council, QuickStart delivers high-impact, low-cost IT training through its cognitive learning platform in multiple domains. With QuickStart, you get an ever-growing catalog of courses, self-paced courses offered through a monthly subscription, virtual classrooms offered through an annual subscription, peer-to-peer learning, mentoring, official courses, certified instructors, hands-on labs, and more. For more information, visit www.quickstart.com. Use coupon code PAUL20 to get 20% off on all cybersecurity courses. Quick Start, creating world-class technologists. Next week, it's here already. It's Black Hat DEF CON week, and everybody may or may not survive. That remains to be seen. Make sure that you come by our Cabana, or Cabana, I don't know how you say that, at Las Vegas. We're going to have a pool cabana. Yes, a pool cabana where you get to see Paul and I get burned to a crisp by the pool in Vegas at different fancy Vegas hotels, where you can get a free copy of Cyber Hero Adventures, which is a graphic novel. We don't call them comic books anymore. So you'll be able to get that graphic novel signed by Gary Berman himself. So you should really check that out. Today we welcome Ron Gula, the founder of Tenable, literally the founder of Tenable, and Gula Tech Adventures. He has 15 plus years experience as a CEO in the cybersecurity industry, and I think that sort of understates like the importance of Ron Gula, because he's kind of like understated in that context. But I mean, Ron has done everything there is to do. He's not as old as I am, so he can't claim that, but he has certainly done lots of cool, exciting stuff, like working at the NSA. Those kind of fun things. He's a really interesting guy. So thanks for helping out today, Ron.
Wow, Doug, I hope I live up to that introduction.
Well, I hope you do too, because it would be a damn shame if we had, no, I'm just kidding. So thanks for joining us, Ron. One of the questions I really wanted to ask you myself was what exactly does everybody hears about Tenable, and we see the name all over the place, and it's Tenable this and Tenable that, and last week did Jack ring the bell did he get to ring the bell?
Well, unfortunately, there's no actual bell. Everybody says it's a bell. It's actually something that looks like an iPad, and a little button pops up and it counts down. And to meet your end, I actually got to press the button, which halts trading on the NASDAQ. But all the co-founders were there, all the board was there, a lot of the key employees were there. It's very exciting.
That's really sad, because I had this very visual thing in my head of this like big Liberty Bell kind of thing, and Jack, shirtless Jack swinging a big mallet at it or something, and but oh well.
Well, NASDAQ's all virtual.
I know.
Aside from going and watching the first few trades of Tenable stock 10B. They don't have a trading floor, so there's no like people running around doing anything. It's all electronic.
Yeah, it's just like a little tiny room, right, in a storage building in New Jersey or something like that.
Well, if you're walking by Times Square, you can look in and see the studio where we were. Yeah. And it's a studio. It's a couple other rooms, and they do an awesome job.
I've walked past it many times, but. So what is Tenable? What does it do? I mean, it sounds cool, so it must be something interesting.
Well, so. It's interesting. So today, 2018, it's cyber exposure, and it's how could you be compromised to hackers, to compliance regulations, to a whole host of cyber issues. But if you go back 15 years, it was vulnerability scanning. And back in 2002, when we started Tenable, it was how do we get Nessus, how do we scan the network and get a list of vulnerabilities, and then maybe come back a month later and see if we've improved or not. And over the past 15 years, we've had so many things. We've had the cloud, we've had virtualization, we've had mobile devices, we've had IoT, we've had Apple instead of Windows. We've had the need to audit firewalls and routers and switches. All of that hooked up together. It's just insane for a human to actually make sense of all that, and then cross-reference it with standards such as the NIST cybersecurity framework or PCI, or just answer basic questions like, are my internet-facing web servers vulnerable to a zero-day?
So back in, I don't know, a long time ago, I was doing like HIPAA audits and Sarbanes type audits and things like that. And that's essentially what we were doing. We didn't have as many tools back then, so you kind of had to, roll your own kind of stuff. And I guess if I'd been smarter, I could have started, Duggable or something like that. That would have been cool, but I kind of missed the boat on that. So some of us will not be. Yeah. I didn't IPO yesterday or whatever day it was. But
well, a lot of companies are in this space, and the question is, what makes a lasting company? And one of the things we always did at Tenable was we kept investing in the technology. We made the Nessus scanner, we made Security Center. People out there probably have Tenable.io. There are organizations who use all those products. A consultant who's showing up to do an audit of a network doesn't need, something that's got 10,000 agents and pulling data in off the network and off the logs. But if you're a large organization and your CIO or your CEO calls and says, I want to know right now, are we vulnerable to X, Y, and Z? I just saw something on the Wall Street Journal or whatever. How long can it take you to answer that question? And that's where having the agents and the real-time stuff, all of the features that Tenable has, can really make that answer not only accurate, but real-time.
So did you start the company with like a product, or was it just like an idea? I mean, so did you write like a product and code it, and then that was the product that started the company, or was it more like, let's start a company and we'll do some cyber security stuff?
So this was sort of the second company that I was CEO of and co-founder. And Nessus, if people go back, they recall there was an open source user community. It's the founder of that's for No Darrison. He's the chief technology officer of Tenable today. And then the COO was Jack Hufford. And Jack actually was in business development for Enterasys Networks and had just acquired Network Security Wizards, which is where I had done the Dragon intrusion detection system. So when we started Tenable, we knew that there was an open source user community. We knew that there were organizations out there that wanted commercial features in the product. Back in the day in early 2002, if you had open source in your software that you were selling, you had all sorts of compliance and legalese that you had to do. So we were really incentivized by the customers to make a commercial product. But we also wanted to have this management tool. So we wrote something called, it was originally called Lightning.
Yeah.
And we renamed it to Security Center, which was basically it was a fairly advanced vulnerability scanning command and control center where you could do any type of data analytics you wanted, trending vulnerabilities over time, comparing Group A with Group B. Maybe they both patch on Thursdays, but one's been patching continuously, so their exposure is a lot less over time than a static analysis of it right now. So we did all that, and I did a lot of the original coding for Security Center, and I was smart enough to hire a lot of really smart people to take that out of my hands.
Well, yeah. Well, let me ask you something. So, and I talk about this a lot when I do classes because there's this big misconception in the world about open source, and for years you would hear people say, "Oh, it's open source, it's free," and I try to back people off that position a lot because I always tell my clients, I always tell my students, like, nothing matters until it does, which means that until there's money involved, nobody cares. So if there's no money, lawyers will not come looking for you, and lawyers could care less about you unless there's a whole bunch of money. And so open source is one of those very, scary things to me because one, the compliance thing, but the other part of it is people don't read licensing agreements, and they just click OK, and they say it's free, cool, and that's great, and it's fine, and you can use it until you can't. And a lot of times in open source, my observation has been is that, this is perfectly fine for use for academics or education, or it's fine to use for your own personal amusement. But then you sit down and you write a piece of code and you say, ooh, I just invented the next Facebook. And then all of a sudden, the Winklevoss twins show up and they say, well, we didn't care until this was worth $1 billion. And now we care a whole lot. And they call a lawyer and say, and the lawyer says, well, is it worth $1 billion? Well, what's your take on from your work in open source?
Open source is a great way to get a community. It's a great way to test technology. It's a great way to get people to contribute to your project. But today, the world is such cloud first. What used to be components that people would draw from the open source community for, they're drawing from Amazon. So if you look at a modern mobile web application that runs on AWS, 50%, 90%, depending on how you count the code, of those APIs come from them. Now, maybe those are open source underneath the hood, but what license is it? Did they even release it because it's just running on their system? They're not giving you software. They're giving you the right to use the software. It's really changed the game. Open source is still really popular in a lot of places. Linux is a great example. Android is a great example. But the world has also kind of moved on to freemium products. So look at the Chrome browser, right? Nobody pays for Chrome. But it's the basis of Google's approach for not only Chromebooks, but how we watch TV and how we interact with their email. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff going on. And as far as the free versus not free, I love to talk to people about the total cost of operations, the economics of doing something. If you can do something with free software, but it takes you 20 engineers and your costs at Amazon skyrocket, great, that one component's free, but your total cost is really something you need to track. This is where commercial solutions can sometimes solve these really interesting business problems.
Yeah, I mean, and so if you heard Ron say APIs are libraries of things, and they can be today very nebulous thing. They always could be very nebulous things, but traditionally for a lot of old time programmers, an API was just a library that you wanted to add because you wanted to do something specialized when you wrote code. So if somebody had already coded all that, they had already built a tool or whatever, you could embed that in like a C program or whatever, and it saved you from having to write the whole thing again. But today, APIs have become cloud-based, so you can see a reference to a cloud-based library coming out of a piece of code. They can be very nebulous. They can consist of additional APIs that have been embedded in the first API, so you can have this giant mess, and you don't really know what's in there, but it still facilitates what you're doing, and it's cheaper than developing it all yourself. A real common example of this would be a gaming engine. So if someone's using Unreal Engine to write games, that Unreal Engine is a kind of API that has all these tools and objects and things you can use in your game, but you don't really know how it all works or who wrote the original or even maybe what's going on. So if you're developing products like that, you need to be very careful that you understand the rules about the APIs that you're using. So if you just go out and start grabbing things and plugging it in, again, it won't matter until it does. But, as long as it's just you fooling around in the basement and you wrote something cool, that's fine. But then all of a sudden you say, wow, this is a cool enough thing, I could sell it. So if I did want to do that, Ron, how would I start a company? So if I was that kind of, I wasn't so lazy and not, the smartest person around, and I did want to develop, Duggable, how would I do that? I mean, if I was just like, say, an 18-year-old programmer.
Well, you don't have to be an 18-year-old programmer. I try to encourage anybody who's got the interest to be an entrepreneur and try to encourage others to be entrepreneurs. The thing I like to tell people is you shouldn't do companies, you shouldn't do startups just to make money. It takes too much passion, takes too much emotion, takes too much work and effort to do it just to make money. You have to have some sort of goal in mind. So when we did Network Security Wizards, I thought we could do a better network intrusion detection than what was out there on the market, and I actually thought that doing so would help people protect, their networks. When we did Tenable, we thought that the world was going to get so complex that we really wanted to have a platform we could pull all this data in and know if you're secure or not, know if you're compliant or not, and know that was a really difficult thing to do. So now everything we just talked about, open source, components from the cloud, how do I start Duggable? It all starts with that idea. If you've got an idea to where you can go out and you think you can solve a problem better than somebody else, then you really think, well, if you can solve a problem that people are willing to pay for the answer to that problem, that's the key. Because if you're just kind of making a better mousetrap or making a beer that tastes better, I mean, there's a lot of different things people can do that optimize it. I like innovation and disruption. So Duggable, if it's an innovative, disruptible kind of thing, you're going to do well.
Okay, so I have all the wrong traits for that. So I'm lazy and yeah, and I don't have any money, and I'm only in it for the money. So it's like, yeah, I get it. But so if you're out there and you have an idea that you have to believe in it, and I've often told people that, because I've had a lot of consulting clients come to me and they wanted to start companies or whatever, and I kind of told them what you just told all the viewers, which was, you have to believe in it. I think that's step one. It can't just be, I want to do this for the money. And I used to be a musician, and when I was a musician, I saw that a lot too. People got into music because they thought, oh, I'll be famous, or I can go out and I can make a lot of money. And I'm like, that's not what music's all about. Music is about you wanting to play something, and real musicians don't usually even care about the money. That's why they're living in their car. You'll see this guy who's the greatest blues guitarist you've ever seen in your life, and you're like, wow, man, you must be so rich. And the guy's like, actually, I was hoping you could loan me $12 for bus fare, kind of thing. But they're great, they're great at performing, and sometimes musicians do make a lot of money. So the same thing with startups, I think, from what I've seen, is that you have to believe in it, but you also have to have something that's unique and original, and like you said, solves a problem in the marketplace. So I'll ask you the question then: what is the next big problem? I mean, where do we go? I mean, I know the future's not about Tenable, but just in general. Well, in cyber, what is the next big problem? I'm taking notes here.
So it's very little has changed over the last 20 years. We still have tremendous problems with confidentiality, integrity, and availability, and those three problems go across everything from telecommunications and large bandwidth down to at-home, IoT devices like Alexa. Mm-hmm. Big enterprises have still a lot of issues where they've bought hundreds and hundreds of different pieces of technology, and they honestly don't know how they're all hooked together. Are what they doing, is it configured correctly? Are they being breached? Are they not being breached? So we're still having problems answering that high level question of, are we doing everything that we could be doing? Yeah. I've spent a lot of time talking to customers who've rolled out Tenable. They're really happy with the reports. But when you start looking at all the other things outside of the ones and zeros, your people, your supply chain, should you go into business? Should you open up another factory in this country, in Africa or Eastern Europe or South America? These are some really high level questions that are definitely tied to cybersecurity. We don't know that. We also have a lot of issues as consumers. The average US person really doesn't seem to care a whole lot about privacy. Nobody seems to care that phone calls can be intercepted with, stingrays or other types of devices. People who seem to complain about privacy seem to go onto Facebook and LinkedIn and put tremendous details of what their travel and what their families are doing. So we have those kind of opportunities there to help them. A lot of people are really worried about IoT and car security, and I think we should be. There's a lot of opportunity for that as well. And then a lot of people want to be the Facebook of, or the we want to be the IBM of, and they say a category. Maybe it's robot security. Maybe it's trying to get rid of your presence online. There are so many things that you can do as an innovator. It's fun. We're going to be in this business for a very, very long time.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I mean, I haven't seen hardly any change, in the industry from the 80s even. I mean, part of that, I think, is attitude, because a lot of us came up in this world where it was all just about solving a problem, not cybersecurity, but technology was about solving a problem. And we didn't really think about it in terms of securing it. It was always just about, this is a tool. It's like worrying about, that your hammer could be taken out of your toolbox and used as a murder weapon. Well, yeah, it could, but why would somebody do that? And that was the sort of engineering. You're a double E, right? You're an electrical engineer. So engineering's always been about solving a problem in the most efficient way. It wasn't about worrying that someone could actually take another wire and stick it in there and cause a huge problem in the circuit, because why would somebody do that? I'm an engineer. I just want to make a bridge that goes across a river. Why would I worry about, somebody blowing it up or all these things? And technology went down that same road, and I haven't seen that much change in it. I mean, we have better tools for analyzing it. We have better tools for trying to deal with it. But at the end of the day, I mean, we still don't see a commitment to security at any level. People are still getting conned by Nigerian princes. I mean, it's going on. I mean, it's been going on since the Romans, but I mean, all those things kind of come about. So let's talk about this for a minute, because I know you know something about this too. There's an article that comes around all the time about election machines being hacked, and I kind of have a mixed view of this, because my opinion of that, I got asked about this by some press people. It was probably a couple of years ago now. They were asking me about hacking an election, and I said, well, hacking an election machine, okay, that's absolutely doable. I've seen it done. It's probably done next week at DEF CON. They'll have the election hacking thing set up. But hacking an election machine is not the same thing as hacking an election to me. And there's a big gap between going to the town of Warwick and hacking an election machine at the firehouse. Okay, yeah, it probably could be done. Or faking a ballot, or stuffing the ballot box, or registering dead people, and all these things people have done for elections forever, and actually swaying an entire election with, and we don't do politics on here, so this is really just more about the techniques of it. But I mean, what do you think about that?
So I think the concept of, are we going to hack an election? It is some cyber, and it's some information warfare. In other words, who's the one doing it? If it's you and I getting together and we want to get a county executive in some, county in Florida elected, and you're talking about maybe, 500 machines total and stuff. Well, you could do subversion. We could try bribing people. We could pay people in the media or bribe people in the media to write stories that are there. There's so many things you can do to influence an election, besides actually flipping a vote for one candidate to another. What about fundraising? When these candidates are out there, in order for them to put up the signs and have the meetings and travel around the country, they've got to raise money. A lot of times I think if you're going to try to impact a candidate and you do it ahead of the election, there might be great candidates being suppressed from running right now because they've been maybe, framed for child pornography, or maybe they were having an affair. And some intelligence unit identified them and said, hey, look, let's take that person out. Let's blackmail them now before they even get to the election. So I love the focus on the security of the electoral machines, but there's so many ways you can impact an election, both before and during. Another good example would be, imagine it's election night, and you see the reporter standing in the ops center, and they're like, here come the votes from these different counties. And the votes come in completely incorrect because that display that they're looking at was the one that was being hacked. And we've seen lots of news organizations that have been compromised. If you can influence a story at the time the story is being reported, that's another potential opportunity. And this doesn't have to be nation state capabilities. I mean, anybody who's hired a pen test team for their organization knows that you can get really good talent for $20,000 a day, $100,000. That's not a lot of money if you're talking about changing the outcome of an election.
No, I like that, because I think it's the problem with the media, because the media in this case, what I keep seeing and what I keep getting asked with the media is about hacking that election machine, because that's a very tangible thing for people to understand. It's like, oh, here's this thing, and somebody went in and they did this to it, and it made your vote, instead of being this, it was that. So instead of X, it was Y. Okay, everybody goes, oh my God, that's awful, that's awful. But the reality of it is that it's not that difficult. And people have been doing it since, as long as there's been elections, people have been trying to rig elections, and they do it with the media. And I'm not saying everything's fake news or anything like that. It's just, but people have been doing that. People have been registering dead people to vote and hiring, homeless people to go in and vote for them, or whatever they were doing. But we really focus so much on that, just the idea of that machine. And I think that's a foolish thing to do, because that's a very good allegory for the whole cyber world, is that it's very hard for people to focus on this bigger picture of that a hack is not just this little thing. It can be, but a hack can be this much more elaborate scheme. I was making some show notes for a future show about this supposed Russian interference with the energy environment. And they just released this huge podcast thing where they explained the entire thing. DHS went through, they did the forensics, they did the incident response, they went through every piece of this. And it wasn't just a hack. It was this very sophisticated and persistent attempt to manipulate things. And they did it with lots and lots and lots of different things. And that same thing goes with the election. It's not just as simple as me going in and saying, I can rig this one machine in Warwick. Maybe that's going to affect the dog catcher race in Warwick. I guess they have a dog catcher. I don't know, but I'd have to check on that. But they may, if they elect a dog catcher, and you wanted to rig that race. But now it is about using the media. It's about there was always the talk about when they start talking about that the West Coast in the election is affected by the East Coast returns coming in. So everybody says, oh, candidate, Zoidberg is winning in the East Coast. It's a landslide. And Zoidberg has won. We're calling the election for Zoidberg before the polls even close in California, and then people in California don't go vote because they go, oh, well, the election's over. I might as well just, go to the bar. And then all of a sudden, at 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, they're going, oh, wait, Zoidberg, maybe not. There could be some change in this. So there's all those different pieces to that. Did you look at the thing about the energy thing, about all the energy systems?
I've read a good bit of that kind of stuff. The thing I like about the U.S. government is the U.S. government has access to indicators that the general public doesn't have, right? You have to imagine right now that our adversaries are defecting and walking into our embassies all over the world, and every now and then one of them saying, oh, by the way, this is what we're doing in, I don't know, the Tennessee Valley Authority and that kind of thing. So that is something that the rest of the United States and the rest of corporate people who do threat analysis simply doesn't have access to.
Do you think there's going to be I've read a lot of these stories too about that there will be a 9/11-esque cyber attack that's going to change the way we do things, or that will force us to change the way we do things, or that it will take that kind of thing to force us to change the way we do things. What do you think about that?
I think this is the part of the show where we kind of divest from reality and talk about science fiction and Hollywood plots. And,
Yay!
The robots. We're going to have robot self-driving cars. We're going to have, self-flying drones. We're going to have all that.
And I, for one, welcome our AI rulers. So just
lords, right? I'd be the first to welcome them, of course. But we talk about all these things that we have no confidence in, right? We don't have confidence in what the media, the elections anymore. We're losing confidence in our vendors like Apple and whatnot. Yet we're going to come out with yet new technology that's going to really be part of our lives, and that's going to be a rough thing to talk about. What I like to think about when people say these 9/11 attacks, those attacks are going on right now, and they're just smaller at scale. So at what point do we choose to put something in the media to scare people? I mean, we had WannaCry, we had a bunch of big things already, and money was lost, lives were lost, and that's a serious thing. But we're here today, still talking about, oh, is GDPR going to impact my stock price or my boardroom meetings and things like that. The world's getting more and more complex. I don't see one of these big, massive outages really being a big deal.
Okay.
I mean, we had one with Google just probably about 2-3 weeks ago. There was a lot of issues with Google Cloud. Didn't affect the stock price. People are still using Google. So I don't know what it's going to take for people to sort of abandon the internet as we know it and kind of go back to building things in their own data centers. And
I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, I really don't. I think end users who are out there have a great deal of difficulty with all these topics because it sounds like nerd wars. It's like something that doesn't affect me. It's below the horizon and so forth. So I think until there are incidents that directly affect, not even this nebulous, possible identity theft. I mean, now we're just so numb to it. I probably don't get a week goes by without I get a notification that, your data's been breached, and here's another notification, we lost your email, change your passwords, and all this usual nonsense. And I'm like, you know what, guys, I really wish you'd make a better password system if you're going to use the stupid thing. Because I had one that was like, you cannot use anything other than lowercase letters, and I'm like, gee, thanks. and you lost what I used, so now I got to do a new one, and it's not going to help because you'll just lose it again next week. But we all get kind of numb to that, and it doesn't really, you know, until something dramatically impacts us. And I agree with you. I don't think there's going to be some, you know, the end of the world kind of incident. I think it's just going to kind of keep rolling forward, and we learn to deal with it just like we've learned to deal with physical crimes. You know, I mean, people, you know, they've never stopped it. There are ways you maybe could have stopped physical crime, but people are still getting their purses snatched at the mall, and people are still getting their cars stolen at the parking lot. You know, so we've just learned to embed that in our lives, and I think the cyber thing is the same way.
Well, it's interesting. We talk about cybersecurity, but we don't talk about operational security enough. And I would love to see an example where, well, obviously I don't want anything bad to happen, but this is actually a good story. I would love to see an example where an organization, you know, other than the NSA or the DoD, you know, did background checks on their employees, you know, worked in a secure building that was ComSec secure, you know, worked with, you know, encryption all the time, worked with code names, code words, and basically still turned a profit and was resistant to all these cyber espionage attacks that we're seeing from China and Russia. It just astounds me that we have an open society, and which allows pretty much, you know, open espionage. Our adversaries can walk freely among, you know, our. Yep. Yet we run our businesses as if we think we're the NSA, but the reality is, you know, any one of our employees is posting secrets, perhaps, you know, on LinkedIn or Facebook, you know, that evening. Our companies are not as robust and locked down as they should be. So I'd love to see a company that was robust and locked down, and a lot of them are. Actually have, you know, get the benefit of it when something like this does happen.
I completely agree. I mean, I think eventually we will, but, you know, companies don't like to share their approach, and when they are being successful, they don't like to talk about it because then somebody else will do it too, I guess. But a
certain amount of passing the buck, right? If you and I start competing companies and you choose to invest in IT security, background checks, and I don't, and I put all my money in marketing, and then the Russians steal my plans, or the Chinese, or you do, I can go complain to the government and say, hey, you know, well, you should do this for me. So a lot of times when I see corporations doing that, I kind of think that they've passed the buck in some cases. It's hard to tell the difference between a company that's done the right thing and invested all throughout cybersecurity, and then some of them who are just saying, oh, I think the government's going to have me covered.
Cool. All right. So next week we're going to be at DEF CON and Black Hat. So we'll be at all of the above. Shows are not on live next week because we'll be in a different time zone, and I won't even say what we'll be doing, but we will be at DEF CON and Black Hat. So if you are going to be at DEF CON and Black Hat, please come by either the Pool Cabana or our booth in the auditorium. We've got shirts, we've got shot glasses. I'm doing trivia. I got new trivia questions for you. They're new. I wrote new ones. And I wrote them, so that means that they're crazy, super hard. So if you think you know a lot about Star Wars or Rick and Morty, you should come by and see if you can win some swag off of me. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another show. I want to thank Ron Gula so much for joining us on SDL. A brilliant guy and a very frightening person in general. But thank you, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Bye.